Want to know how to beat burnout and overwhelm without leaving your job? When we're fixing relationships, we're no longer functioning solely with logic. We're working through our emotions in our toughest moments. It's pretty much exactly what it's like when things get crazy at work. So stick around for a new unlimiting belief to thrive through rough patches at work. Plus, a simple process that's highly relevant to get you started. David here, ex-relationship coach. My marriage collapsed. I found a program. I learned how to save my family. I became a coach. I actually loved helping. Now, I'm writing a book and running this YouTube to share the lessons. Oh, and I did save my family. Overwhelm. How to actually thrive rather than just surviving when everything is coming at once. So why work on this problem in the first place? Well, life is going to be full of unknowns and uncertainty. Last minute changes and delays leading to inevitable, overwhelming situations. And we all always want to deliver on good outcomes, right? But outside circumstances like shifting and conflicted deadlines sometimes are going to make this impossible. As professionals who pride themselves on always delivering, when that's not actually possible, it causes immense stress. So our overwhelm, our sense of being overwhelmed eventually spills over, catching others unaware and leading to mad scrambles, leading to spreading of that overwhelmed feeling. Eventually, the urgency of the situation that we find ourselves in means that help has to be sought. The late hour spreads the problem, others become overloaded trying to help, and it just spreads. So what's the solution then? We need to focus on what we can control and identify clear processes. So let me explain what I mean by this. Tying our satisfaction and motivation to outcomes instead of processes is counterproductive. It's always going to leave us wildly swinging from being satisfied to feeling miserable. When things are going well, you're going to be fine. You continue your processes and you feel confident because outcomes are following pretty much what you expect, right? But on the other hand, when things are going badly, you are still tied to that outcome. So you are swiftly finding yourself being dragged down. I was going to draw this out for a sec. What we actually find is that when things are going well, you're fine. You continue your processes and you feel confident because the outcomes are following what you expect. When things are going badly, you're tied to the outcome. So you're swiftly dragged down. For example, you are up and down with the weather. You see this kind of situation here, right? When it's a sunny day, you've got a clear plate. Brilliant. I love the work. I've got this. I'm great at everything. But then when it's this stormy weather, everything's coming at once. You've got conflicts. You've got changed timelines. Well, I must be useless. I'm panicking. I'm panic working, deprioritizing my family. I'm losing sleep. So this is the situation that we find ourselves in when we have this fixation on these outcomes instead of the process. But the problem as well is feeling bad about the outcome doesn't do anything to fix it. It can be paralyzing for a start. It can slow you down from seeking help due to fear of being seen as a failure. It stops you from focusing on solutions because the solutions are outside of your control. For example, I can't do anything about the fact that 2 clients have finally sprung their comments on me and now they're hoping for a quick turnaround and that new client wants their work to be prioritized due to deadlines. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm disorganized or incompetent and that this is how it came about. Clients seem upset already and are blaming me when this is really situational. This leaves you feeling paralyzed and time keeps ticking while you stress out over things that are outside of your control. These moments, they're actually inevitable. So not having an actual process to handle them is kind of insane when you think about it. Entropy, things going wrong, this chaos, all this conflicts, changing timelines, this storm, this is a fact of life. These moments will occur no matter how well you plan and track your commitments. For example, not having a process for these inevitable bad moments, these inevitable bad outcomes, is a little bit like having a big wooden factory with open flame sources everywhere and not even having a fire drill in place. Why then don't we all have a clear process for when these inevitable bad outcomes arrive, to respond without personal distress and to just help us to turn things around. The other thing to realize is that duality of mind means that you can't just stop worrying about the outcome. It's not possible. Going back to this again for a moment, that's these chasms here. Your subconscious will always know that there's a gaping chasm between where you want to be and where you actually are. We can't just use willpower to tell ourselves it's okay when things aren't going well, that it's fine, that there aren't enough hours, that we can get it all done somehow. The fact is, if the outcomes are your focus instead of the processes, you will just be stuck staring into that chasm. An example of this, right? So sending the email, having the conversation to inform all the stakeholders about what's going on in a clear, honest, professional manner, talking about your proposed next steps, figuring out what those next steps are, time blocking the hours necessary to bring things under control. If this is all done with confidence, it should be deeply satisfying and reassuring. Whereas sitting with the problem or worrying about it is not. I'm just going to go back to this for one more second. So, if you think about it, you got to where you wanted to be when things were sunny by just following your process. Just the same, when you're faced with these conflicts, changing timelines, etc., you just go to that process. Don't worry about that outcome. Focus on the process. You'll get there. We call this being tethered to the outcomes. And it's actually one of the two main ways that these deceivers get hold of us. The other is when we refuse the call to be the hero, to go on that hero's journey. So there are clear benefits of a process focus over an outcome focus. It is going to allow you to actually diagnose what is within your control. It really means that you escape that paralysis and you can find ways to prevent recurrence, not only put that fire drill in place, but also prevent fires in the first place. So think about it like this. 2 circles, okay? In this circle, things we have little control over in this circle. So other people, sudden changes, delays, unknowns, mistakes, emergencies, all these things we have little control over. But in this circle, things we have control over. Tracking, planning, communication, how we see things, negotiation. We want to focus here. We want to focus on this inner circle. Further out even, there are things like the universe, the economy, natural disasters. You don't want to spend any time thinking about these things. So this is where we focus, on the things that we actually have control over. And this is what we really call the hero mindset. This is the essence of it. We focus all of our energy solely on what we control, what we can do. And another benefit here is that it keeps you, this process focus keeps you taking action. So having a clear process stops you from overthinking about things and just gets you moving. It's easy to get stuck. Writing, rewriting emails, planning, replanning timelines, having many meetings, staring at the page, because you feel it's very important to do something, to be doing something more, something better, to try and fix, to get those outcomes. And you end up stuck in motion with your wheels spinning rather than moving forward. Having a clear process stops this kind of overthinking and it gets you moving in the right direction. It also gives peace of mind, a process that's designed to work on stormy days. This is your fire drill, and you're deriving satisfaction and peace of mind from how well you execute on that process, not on how well things are actually going. So for example, Hurricane Katrina. FEMA, that governmental body in the US, was never going to be able to actually prevent it from happening. But if the process for actually responding to the situation had been excellent, they could have been satisfied and praised for doing the best job possible, instead of the debacle that we know actually occurred with lives lost, etc. So the good outcomes are going to inevitably follow when you just have that process focus, when you start straight away focusing on the things that you can control, finding that process to move forward. Doing this early, it allows you to perform better, to get more sleep, to have clearer thinking as a result of getting more sleep, and help others on your team. You move from being someone who has a cup that's half empty to a cup that's full, and sometimes overflowing. So how do we actually shift focus back onto the processes that we control? Well, if you think about it, you've already been doing this for your entire working life, with every positive organizational and communication habit that you have developed. A new person who doesn't have all the different soft skills that you've accumulated for organization, communication, etc., they would pretty much just explode immediately if they were put into your position. This is why they ask for 3 years of experience on job applications. They ask for all that experience because they know that these soft skills take time to develop. But what we just need conscious thinking to actually try and crystallize and further develop those soft skills that you have. So how do we do that? How to refine these processes? Well, what about starting with some tips from a book? It's one way to do it. We want to try and have an airtight way to capture and track commitments. It's allowing you to communicate clearly. You're going to build incredible trust. Other project managers, your clients, they're going to be more understanding of delays because they feel that you're dependable. You know what's going on. You're across everything. It's going to allow you to plan and renegotiate commitments as needed. It's going to give you immense confidence in yourself because you're always going to know where you stand. So a great book for this is a book called Getting Things Done. It's a fairly old book. I recommend this one. It's The Art of Stress-Free Productivity by David Allen. It sounds simple, this concept of having this airtight way of tracking all our commitments. And you might think, okay, I already do that. Few of us do this perfectly. There is this subconscious resistance that we all have, that's procrastination, to capturing and tracking our commitments that comes from not fully knowing what exactly our commitments are in the totality, what the next steps are, when we'll be able to actually accomplish those, where they fit in. This procrastination comes from the open loop, that feeling of uncertainty about how and when. Guilt is automatically associated with this open loop. That's that chasm again from the duality of mind that I talked about. So it's all these thoughts like could have, should have, ought to have done this. But let's say you do get that complete picture. Let's say that you do work on getting everything down. Even with a complete picture, the relief that we feel still is kind of mingled with anxiety. The question then, does the remaining anxiety really come from having too much to do, even when you've gotten organized? Well, no, not really. Fact is, there's always going to be too much to do in life. The anxiety is really the result of broken agreements with yourself and with others. It's your comprehension of all those agreements that are lying there when you start to tally them all, when you start to list them all out, and you start to realize, hey, I don't know the next step for that thing. I don't actually know when I'm going to do that. So each agreement with these unanswered things attached to it is a little bit like a Schrodinger's cat of an agreement. Is that broken yet or not? If not broken now with somebody, when will it be broken? How long do I really have to get this one figured out? And these open loops really damage your trust in yourself, and it damages other people's trust in you. So how do we actually prevent these broken agreements from forming with ourselves, with others? Well, we break it down and ignore the limiting beliefs that we've accrued from focusing on external factors that are beyond our control. I can't just move timelines, etc. And we just go for the facts. There are only 3 ways to prevent broken agreements. We don't make the agreement in the first place. We complete the agreement, get it done, or we renegotiate the agreement. So let's look at each of those separately. First, don't make the agreement in the first place. Well, your values, company and personal values are going to lead you to a sense of responsibility and high standards. And that's a great thing. Okay. That's not a bad thing at all. But is that causing some of this overwhelm? Well, yeah. Taking inventory of everything that we've agreed to do can reveal a lot that is no longer the best way to meet those values. It's no longer relevant or important. It's no longer the biggest priority. It's no longer the best way to meet your most important values, company and personal. Each item, though, is going to weigh on you just the same, which feeds this anxiety. So at the end of the day, look, we're not going to lower our standards. Nobody would want that. But we might, just in retrospect, make fewer agreements. We might also try to complete a few agreements, okay, and get some stuff done. You can find more ways to get things done, like practicing the 2-minute rule from this book that I've recommended, Getting Things Done. Or, other things like The One Thing by Gary Keller is a great book on getting that focus. You could do that. But even if you do that, like we said before, it's inevitable that this bad weather will return. Storms threatening to overwhelm will always come back. you are gonna fill, first of all, what's gonna happen is even if you complete a lot of things, a lot of tasks, you're gonna fill the time with other useful stuff. You're gonna find other things to do. And then your company will naturally find, okay, well, you're underutilized, we're gonna give you some more work. Then external forces are gonna collide again. And bingo, you're back in this storm threatening you all over again. So you're not going to lower your standards and you're not going to stop finding things to do. And these inevitable overwhelming moments are not going to stop coming. If you want peace of mind, you need to be comfortable to renegotiate a few agreements. Think about it. We have this resistance to this because it feels like I'm not meeting my outcomes. That's not the case, right? Think about it. An agreement that has been successfully renegotiated is not actually a broken agreement. It's harder the longer you leave it and the more things you've allowed to slip. And in fact, it's sometimes impossible to renegotiate agreements if you've forgotten or let it slip for too long. Hence, it's crucial to track all the things. That inspires more confidence and trust. So if you think about it like this kind of complete circle now, the Ouroboros of this process is complete. We simply keep track of the next action and when for all the different commitments, and we renegotiate where needed. That's the process that we move to instead of focusing on the outcomes that may be slipping out of control because of outside factors that we do not control. So we've talked about here how we want to focus on a process that's actually in our control, not the outcomes that are outside of it. That unknowns are going to make overwhelming moments inevitable. That we want to focus only on what we can control. That focus on the outcomes is not helpful. It's counterproductive. That focus on the process is actually surprisingly going to be, it's the thing that works in the sunny weather, and it's the thing that's going to work in the bad weather as well. Focus on that process. Process focus is going to give you peace of mind as well when that becomes your default. And what that process might look like. We've talked about crystallizing your thinking about the soft skills that are needed. We've talked about one suggested process, getting things done by David Allen. We've talked about broken agreements are actually trading trust for anxiety. So you want to track, find next actions, and renegotiate things where needed. So I promised you at the beginning an unlimiting belief to help you thrive through rough patches at work. That focus that I talked about of looking only at what's within your control, that's the hero's mindset in a nutshell. It works here for overwhelm at work because it works for everything everywhere. The only challenges are in building that muscle of actually having the strength to turn to our hero mindset and look for that next thing that we can control, of learning how to apply it, of resisting the urge to refuse the call and to comfort ourselves instead. And the other shift that I talked about, from thinking about outcomes to now thinking about processes, is just as crucial and effective across all aspects of life. It's a little bit less intuitive though, so let me put it this way. You're probably wasting a significant chunk of your precious time and energy thinking, ruminating over and over about the outcomes. In a crisis, you actually have even less time and energy to waste. But here, the outcomes seem even more important, and they demand even more of your time. This feedback loop that is created here, where the situation worsens as you focus more on the outcomes. This feedback loop is one that we fall into every time, all of us, if we let ourselves. Focus on the process sooner and with confidence that it's the best and only solution. That's the core belief here. I focus on what I control, and I find out what that process is, and I push the outcomes aside and focus solely on that process. For more mindsets to help you thrive and be the hero in work, life, for the other people that you care about, subscribe. All right.